Police issue an arrest warrant for a 15-year-old in a weekend murder. On Saturday, just before noon, Rockford police were called out to 7th Avenue near 9th Street. They found a man shot to death in his car.
The victim was 54-year-old Miguel Perez. According to witnesses, he was shot waiting in his car while family members and friends knocked on neighbors' doors. The family are Jehovah Witnesses. Jess Lipson spoke to someone who lives in that area. Jess, what were you able to gather?
Eric and Mimi, I spoke with Jerry Peterson, who said this startled many of the neighbors. Something he also emphasized was gun violence in the area is nothing new.
This is not the first time I've heard gunfire around here. I have bullet holes in my house. It's terrifying.
Those bullet holes are not in relation to the shooting over the weekend. However, longtime Rockford resident Jerry Peterson wants to emphasize he's seen it before.
This town has become ridiculous. I've seen LA 13 gang graffiti on that building over here on the stop sign years ago. I've known of murder by knife across the park. Every month around here I hear gunfire.
Witnesses say 54-year-old Miguel Perez was in his car as he waited for his family. They are Jehovah Witnesses who were knocking on doors. This has caused concern for Peterson and other neighbors who may be worried about something like sitting in their car during the day. Peterson says that if danger continues, he may be forced to live elsewhere.
I'm thinking about it. I've lived here 19 years. I've seen a lot of things that shouldn't be happening if people would have more consideration for others.
The 15-year-old suspect is still on the run. If you know any information, call the Rockford Police or Rockford Area Crime Stoppers. Eric?
Good morning. It's been a busy morning and a two-pot day. As you seen in the clip, a Jehovah Witness sitting in his car waiting for his family going door to door was shot and killed. And so our hearts and thoughts go out to the Perez family. I mean, what a horrible thing. I mean, these poor Jehovah's Witnesses are going to be traumatized now to go back in this neighborhood. And as you heard in the clip, you know, the neighbors say it's a dangerous neighborhood. And now they're even afraid to sit in their cars that they're going to be attacked.
Yeah. It's a sad event, but it's something that happens all too often just simply because the Watchtower Bible Tract Society is very pretentious about who and what they are and how they handle the Bible. And this whole thing is undue influence because Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you that this is a volunteer service. But yet if you don't go out and preach, then God will ask that blood back at your hands. It's diametrically opposed. They'll also fill your brain with the thought process that God can read hearts. He knows the intentions. Well, if God knows all this stuff, then preaching the word, once again, is diametrically opposed to those thought processes. Jehovah's Witnesses will make you believe through the use of the Bible that God sent an angel to save the burning backsides of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They will use this book and make you believe that God sent an angel to shut the mouth of a lion or lions in the lion's den, when you can't even recognize that Daniel was made head of the magic practicing priests in Babylon. They will make you believe all this stuff, all this woo-woo stuff in the Bible. But yet these sad results are a result of believing that stuff.
Yeah. Now I want to mention that I went to jw.org under JW News, and all I seen was the persecution affects 3 families in Yaroslav and the devastating earthquakes in Turkey. It's been 5 days since this happened, and you think they would want to get this news out, but no, they're not going to want to get this news out because then it would scare other Jehovah's Witnesses into going preaching in these dangerous neighborhoods. Now, my daughter was just telling me this morning about how dangerous our local city is getting, and it's not even near as big as the Illinois area, and they're having problems with gang violence and drugs and everything else, because not only do we have an open border, but because all of these people are moving in from California. The gangs, they're cracking down on the gangs in California, so they're all moving to these other areas, including Illinois. Of course, we know Chicago has a long history of violence. Now, I want to mention to those of you in other countries that in Illinois, it is one of the toughest firearm laws in this country, and a 15-year-old is prohibited from possessing and buying a firearm. So this is an illegal use and possession of a firearm. I just want to make that point that, you know, he did not legally possess this. So, but the reason I bring this up is people are getting to where they don't want to open their doors to strangers. When I told my daughter this, she said the preaching work is done. They just don't realize it.
That's right.
Because even out here in the middle of nowhere, if a stranger shows up at our door, we have a window right by our front door. We open that window and see what they want, unless we know it's a neighbor or something. So we don't even open our door, even out here in the middle of nowhere, to strangers. But, you know, just imagine how traumatized this whole area is going to be now. Like that clip mentioned, the neighbor, he said we're afraid to even sit in our vehicles now because of the violence.
See, and the larger issue here, friends, is it's not the tool or the device that was used in this murder. What it is we live in a geopolitical religious world that dates all the way back to that Nicene Council, because it's a control issue. That's the issue. That's the problem, because our religious leaders, like Watchtower, has failed all of us, because 1914 came and went. That generation came and went. We were handed empty promises while they got filthy, filthy rich. Our elected officials, same thing, empty promise. If you elect me, I promise to do this, and you can't legislate morality from a governmental seated position or an elected position any more than Christianity can legislate morality. Because while they're talking about all this moral stuff, we all know what your religious leaders have done and are capable of doing, because the news is getting littered with the CSA problem, not just among Jehovah's Witnesses, but among other religions.
Exactly. And we all know if you do not go out and service preaching, they say, oh, it's a volunteer. Well, no, it's not, because when I got sick and my health problem and I couldn't go out and service and go to meetings anymore, my own mother-in-law said, well, Kim, you know what that means? You're going to die at Armageddon. So this is the undue influence they put on members. Now, I have an elder's letter here that is dated January 27th. And I didn't get a chance to do a video about this, and maybe that was the universe telling me that now is the time to do it. For elders in the United States Branch Territory, reminders due to potential civil unrest. Now, I would call the violence in some of these cities civil unrest. As widely reported in the media, there may be increased potential for civil unrest in areas of the Branch Territory. You think? Therefore, we wish to remind you of the need to remain alert to developments in your area. It will be left to your good judgment to determine if additional precautions are needed to protect the congregation. Why didn't the elders warn the Jehovah's Witnesses not to go in these violent neighborhoods? But see, no, they got to cover all their territory. So this is why this is on Watchtower. It's on Watchtower's heads. Although we do not wish to cause undue alarm, Proverbs 22:3 states, "The shrewd one sees the danger and conceals himself." Since a disturbance can arise unexpectedly, when appropriate field service group overseers should promptly encourage family heads to consider what steps they may take to protect their family, such as avoiding unnecessary travel. I might add, sitting in your car during field service.
Well, if they're putting all this responsibility on family heads, then why don't you family heads says, you know what? We're all done preaching. It's not safe for myself and my family. You know, the only really sad thing about this, what if this JW was a PMO?
That's the really sad part.
They ended their lives. They end their lives for nothing.
Well, because we know a lot of PMOs didn't want to go back out in service.
It's a complete waste of human life. And Watchtower is responsible because they're using a book and undue influence.
Well, we knew Jane Doe's pioneer daughter. She didn't even want to go back out in the field service.
No.
What is that telling you? They don't want to go back out in service. They know it's dangerous out there. Okay, going on. Not leaving their home at night and avoiding areas prone to protest or violence, if possible. Please verify any assistance that those with special needs, such as the elderly, may require. Please also review the arrangements you have made to secure the Kingdom Hall and protect congregation records. Oh my God, they're more concerned about their property and congregation records in this? What about protecting members from dangerous neighborhoods and telling them, you know, you might want to avoid those areas? And hopefully they will be smart enough not to do the cart witnessing in these neighborhoods. Good Lord. Seeing the world become more violent and divided during the last days is not surprising. Of course, as Jehovah's people, we will continue to maintain our strict neutrality. Well, that didn't help Mr. Perez, Brother Perez, did it? And heed Jesus' warning to be cautious as serpents and yet innocent as doves. Yeah, it didn't help him.
Well, there again, if Jehovah God is capable of reading hearts, then when he brings Armageddon, all of your preaching work is needless because God will just read the hearts and put the wicked to death. You people don't get it. Why? Because you're absolutely blinded by light instead of seeing through the light in what's absolutely in front of you.
First Circuit overseers in the United States branch territory, reminders due to potential civil unrest. So see, now they're also making the circuit overseers responsible. See, Watchtower is covering their backsides with this letter. They're making it the responsibility of the elders and the circuit overseers to try to keep the Jehovah's Witnesses safe. Oh, and of course their property and their precious records.
In their records, yeah.
Yeah, so now they're adding the circuit overseers and their responsibility. Going on, we would appreciate your remaining vigilant and proactively encouraging bodies of elders in your circuit to care for this responsibility if you note a threat of civil unrest in your circuit. So it's the circuit overseer's fault too, because they know about these dangerous neighborhoods. And like Mike mentioned, there have been so many articles, and if I find one of those, I'll put right here in the text where one of these articles where angels are protecting the Jehovah's Witnesses going door to door. So in editing this, I found the Watchtower article I was looking for in the 2006 Watchtower, January 15th, page 4. Angels, how they affect us. Now, I want to mention here that we were told our entire lives that out in service, preaching, doing God's will, that we would be protected. Okay? Page 5. It's the first column, first full paragraph. Do angels protect us today? If we worship Jehovah according to his word, we are assured that his powerful, invisible angels provide us with protection. The Bible promises the angel of Jehovah is camping all around those fearing him, and he rescues them. Watchtower lied to us. Angels are not protecting the Jehovah's Witnesses out in the field ministry, doing God's will. This is a lie. If nothing else, if all the Jehovah's Witnesses believed this, I believed it. I believed I was under angelic protection. And there's hundreds of articles that mention this. We were lied to. And I mean, if I was the Perez family, I would be suing Watchtower. File a lawsuit against them for lying to us and making us believe. Talk about undue influence. They lied to us, and we believed that we were under angelic protection. Sickening. How many times did we hear experiences on the conventions and assemblies and from the platform of, oh, someone went to the door and they preached to somebody who wasn't interested, and then an Avon lady went to that same door a little time later and they got murdered. See, Jehovah is protecting all of us. No, he's not. Maybe he's in the privy when this happened. Who knows?
No, there again, it's all based on a book full of allegory stories through BS woo-woo stuff that God's gonna send an angel and shut the mouths of the lions. Save your burning butts in a fiery furnace that's been stoked up multiple times. And yet God will even send an angel, or better yet, God sent an angel to strengthen Jesus in the night when he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. You Jehovah's Witnesses in particular, instead of studying the Watchtower, instead of studying the Bible, why don't you investigate these things? Because when you do this, you will come to the conclusion that myself and many others have. The Bible also contains false prophecies. The Watchtower Bible Tract Society used one of those alleged prophecies about the time of the end and the generation. Well, they took those false words and applied it to the generation in 1914. See, Jesus returned, but it was invisibly. That generation that recognized the invisible return of Jesus would still be around to see the start of the Great Tribulation. That generation is dead in God, but yet you still believe in the woo-woo stuff. You don't get it. You'll never get it because you think your eternal salvation is based on words in a book that absolutely contradict themselves. The theologies alone contradict themselves. So when I hear news reports of this, it's an absolute waste of human life. And guess what? Your governments are not going to do a blessed thing about it. Why? Because the governments are protecting the religions of this world through that 501c3. You guys really want change? Go to your congressional leaders and start demanding they do away with the 501c3. Stop protecting these religions through this BS charitable status, because there is no charity involved with all of this. There is no charity. It's just a scheme to control people's minds through undue influence that comes from a book that's just a couple thousand years old.
Allegedly.
Well, there again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. All that's in that book is ancient mythology, laws that do not originate with the Israelites. They originate from Egypt, from Babylon.
Persia.
Persia. Exactly. This book does not originate with Moses, if you want to go that far. It doesn't originate with him. All he did was take a bunch of ancient mythology, a bunch of stories, combine it together in the Torah and say, now we have the real identity of God. Investigate. And then maybe one or two families will be spared of this type of tragic incidents that we now have to come out here and talk about.
Yeah.
It's not difficult.
Yeah, and it's really sad. Now, Mike mentioned governments and 501c3s, and we do have news. And I want to thank Katina for sending me this information. And I believe she's also the same one that sent me the link to this news article about the Jehovah Witness being shot. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. But this is from Forbes.com. Now remember, I did a couple of videos about Watchtower investments, and I mentioned the U.S. government's branch of the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, and how you could get some information of the 990 forms through their website, okay? So that's the same commission, the SEC commission. I'm going to put a link down below to this article because remember I mentioned we need to watch what's going on with other religions to see the pattern of what could apply to Watchtower.
Right.
And what could be happening to other religions, because we're going to try to get it to the attention of this commission of Watchtower doing the same thing. So see, this is why we need to look at patterns and see, oh yes, we can use this against Watchtower, okay? Breaking. SEC reportedly probes Mormon Church over $100 billion investment portfolio allegedly saved for second coming of Christ. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same thing Watchtower is doing.
The same thing.
Yeah. So I'm going to read just the first couple of paragraphs of this. And like I said, you can read the rest of it. The Securities Exchange Commission is investigating the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints over allegations it failed to disclose investments in a secretive $100 billion portfolio. The Wall Street Journal reported Friday, years after the church was accused of skirting tax rules and deceiving donors to build up a fund one leader purportedly suggested could be used in the second coming of Christ. Sound familiar? This is kind of what I was covering in my videos with the Watchtower investments. The SEC's probe, which the Journal reports has reached an advanced stage, specifically looks into whether an investment arm of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints called Inside Peak Advisors broke the SEC's requirements that large portfolio managers disclose certain holdings. And I mentioned that too, that the newer 990 forms from the Watchtower and Riley Trust, they do not have the supplement of all their investments. Mormon Church did the same thing. Sources close to the matter told the Journal the investigation is likely to lead to a settlement. The church did not respond to a Forbes inquiry for comment, although the church had previously said the investment portfolio was intended as a rainy day account. The investigation comes just over 3 years after whistleblower David Nielsen, a member of the church and former Inside Peak investment manager, tipped the Internal Revenue Service that the firm had amassed $100 billion in a little-known charitable fund it collected from donations. See, and I think if we could find, well, there's even a few companies with Watchtower Investments, Inc., Watchtower Holdings, Inc., and I bet if we could connect one of those corporations with Watchtower as their investment company, Well, we have the Comerica. That's where they have their portfolio. That's the bank that holds, their Henrietta Riley Trust Fund. So if we could make a connection and get this to the IRS and this SEC, Watchtower's done. Get them investigated, just like the Mormon Church. But see, all of these churches do it. And I think that's why we need to keep an eye on some of these other churches' investigations, because it's a pattern that the daughters of the harlot are all going to be guilty of.
Well, there again, Watchtower will use the same mechanism, guilty by association. So here again, Jehovah's Witnesses, if your God can read hearts and determine, then why isn't your God stopping Watchtower's guilty by association by joining the UN? Guilty by association, flip-flopping the blood doctrine and the blood fractions, and allowing all of these young lives to be snuffed out needlessly. Why isn't your God stopping the internal problems that you people suffer from? They'll never get it, because they want to resonate at the same ground level as ants instead of flying high like eagles.
Yeah. Now, I want to mention that in reading, and there's several different websites that has this article. In reading one of these articles, I noticed that some of the investments that the Mormon Church has, guess what, is in Watchtower's portfolio also.
Come on. Watchtower wouldn't be connected to the Mormon Church through ill-gotten gains.
So what do? Call one another and say, hey, you need to invest in Pfizer or Exxon or something like that? Now, I do want to mention, under the subheading tangent in this article, Nielsen, the whistleblower, had also sent a memorandum to the Senate Finance Committee last month alleging Inside Peak had made false statements about its fund, asking for oversight. The Mormon Church and Inside Peak said they were willing to work with officials, but that the allegations appeared to be dated. Not that they're false, dated.
Do you see the word salad? All these religions play?
Yeah, but see, that is a hint, that is a tip that some of us ex-members have in our ammo box. Letting the Senate Finance Committee, which is part of the U.S. government, the Congress, let Congress know in the Finance Committee what is going on. These churches are abusing the 501c3 tax-exempt status. Norway recognizes this. So, I think this is something that we could use also, especially since we have public records of Watchtower's 990s and this Henrietta Riley Trust and all these other trusts that they have. They're abusing that tax-exempt status, and churches need to be taxed, especially when they're building property empires, real estate empires like the Mormon Church and Watchtower.
Yeah. I mean, it's so obvious. Like I've said before, and I'll state it again right here. If it's not obvious, let me make it obvious now. Two things. Religion is a snare and a racket. And number two, in this day and age, ignorance is a choice.
And the bad thing about a snare is you don't know you're caught in it until it's too late.
Well, stop and think about what Jesus said about the thief coming in. Okay? The thief will come in at night and he will rob your house. What if you, metaphorically speaking, are that house? Look at what Watchtower has come in. On a day that you don't expect it, Watchtower will rob your house. And not only that, Jehovah's Witnesses, Forget the portion that says at night. They're doing it in broad daylight, and you can't recognize what's going on. Watchtower is robbing you people blind, just like all of religion, and they're doing it, and they're doing it in broad daylight.
Yeah, and look they've robbed you of your lives.
That's right.
So thank you for watching, and you have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.